With me now is Maryland Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin. He's a member of the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, been in plenty of these depositions. Congressman, happy Friday to you. Happy snow day, apparently. It's when you step outside of the Capitol, you may see some flakes.
Yes,
John
indeed.
Bolton, what is happening here? And I guess he wants a subpoena. Why haven't you handed him one?
Well, let's see. First of all, he's been quoted widely by other witnesses, including Dr. Fiona Hill, who worked closely with Bolton on the National Security Council. She quoted him as describing Giuliani as a hand grenade who would blow everybody up with the secret operation he was running on behalf of the president to sabotage Ambassador Yovanovitch and then to coerce the Ukrainian government into producing all of this information that they wanted for the 2020 presidential campaign and to rehabilitate Putin for the 2016 presidential campaign. I think that the chair of the Intelligence Committee has a strategy for obtaining Bolton's testimony. I hope, I trust, and the chairmanship has been doing a terrific job at getting these witnesses to come forward despite all of the obstructionism of the White House. President Trump has been doing everything in his power to prevent witnesses from coming forward and to deny us the testimony that we want. And of course, they complained about the closed-door depositions, and so now we're moving to public hearings, and now the president is saying he doesn't want public hearings either. Obviously, he doesn't want any investigation at all into what he did in Ukraine.
Will these public hearings happen with or without John Bolton?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I think that's going to be one of the
Are the hearings a failure? Are the hearings a failure if you don't have John Bolton?
No, on the contrary, we have overwhelming evidence that points to what the whole country knows by now. The president conducted a shakedown operation against a besieged foreign ally that we in Congress had voted $391 million in security assistance to. The president withheld that assistance while he was demanding, as Dr. Fiona Hill put it, or I think it was maybe the Colonel Vindman who put it, he was demanding this information from Ukraine first. But all of the witnesses are lining up in terms of what they're saying. They all saw that this was a shakedown operation against the Ukrainian government.
I want to go back to, you had said you believe Chairman Schiff has a strategy for this. This appears to be the Don McGahn strategy. You're waiting on this. Again, one of the reasons I was given by other members of this committee as to why public hearings are necessary, that the public, the opportunity perhaps to move public opinion as they see all this evidence. At the end of the day, you got to pierce that Republican bubble. Is John Bolton not your best potential witness to pierce that Republican bubble?
Well, I think you'll see that when these witnesses get up, they are tremendously compelling people. They've devoted decades of their life to serving the American people and to the U.S. government. The Colonel Vindman is somebody who got a Purple Heart through his service in Iraq, a decorated war veteran. Dr. Fiona Hill, somebody who's devoted decades of her life to serving the American people. And they're just enormously convincing witnesses who essentially tell of all seeing, the exact same story, which is this coordinated effort by Giuliani and his henchmen, Fruman and Parnas, and the president and Mulvaney, to shake down the Ukrainian government, to get them information that they wanted for totally partisan political purposes for this election. And that's unprecedented in American history. We've never seen anything like it. So, look, it would be better if we had 15 witnesses as opposed to a dozen witnesses or 9 witnesses, but there are no witnesses on the other side. Everybody is telling the exact same story. This is not like an Agatha Christie mystery.
Right. I'm sorry if I keep harping on this ball. From the outside, it looks really confusing here as to why you guys haven't subpoenaed Bolton when Bolton says, please subpoena me. And I understand this Don McGahn strategy, but that's a very hard one to wrap your arms around because that's been a court case that feels like it's never going to end.
Well, this is easy for me to answer because I just don't know. I'm not on the Intelligence Committee. I've had the honor of being part of this process as a member of the Oversight Committee with Intelligence, but Chairman Schiff and his staff have been controlling the subpoena process, and I think they've done remarkably well getting the majority of people who've been subpoenaed to come in, despite all of the threats and intimidation from the White House. But there are some people, especially from OMB, who've been sitting it out, and I think that's a real problem. Look, every American citizen owes Congress testimony. If we ask you to come in, you come in. Any of your viewers out there, if they were subpoenaed and they didn't come in, they would be facing jail time for that. And we've got to understand, it's not an optional thing. You get a subpoena from the U.S. Congress, you come in. They've concocted this phony claim of absolute immunity, which means nothing. Right. It's not based on any case precedent at all. And they should stop, spreading propaganda that there's some absolute immunity that the president's friends get. It just doesn't exist.
That's obviously been true for so long. I would assume the federal courts will agree at some point. Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you for coming on and sharing your views. I appreciate it. Democrat from Maryland. Coming up, Republicans and the latest strategy to defend the president on impeachment is reportedly picking a few guys and tossing them under the bus. Mick Mulvaney, watch your back. And while we're taking questions of loyalty, we're definitely going to talk about Jeff. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.